On this week's Mailbag Monday, the San Diego Padres come about 3 centimeters of an atom away from sweeping the Miami Marlins, but even still winning 2 out of 3 this weekend with a lots of stuff to recap, more comeback wins, pitching woes, whether or not there are any concerns there. And that Jackson Merrill dude, I think it's safe to say he's pretty good.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, August 12th. As always, I am your host, with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Arraez. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, as always, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres, both of which accounts you can reach out if you want your questions answered the way that we will be answering some of the questions and comments, because it is Mailbag Monday, of course. And if you're curious about my other related, maybe some might even say my qualifications, I write about baseball for justbaseball.com, as well as host another podcast for them called Baseball versus the World, so go check that out if you like evergreen pop culture baseball fun. Today's episode, guys, we are going to be recapping this weekend's really lovely series, and frankly, I say lovely because there's actually a lot to talk about, and I have a lot of thoughts from this weekend, despite the fact that they play it against a rebuilding, pretty bad Marlins team. I actually think that there's a lot of things to talk about from this weekend, which explains, by the way, why there are a lot of comments and a lot of questions I think I got this weekend too. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Today's episode, though, of course, guys, is brought to you by Supply House. It is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop for your next plumbing, HVAC, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at supplyhouse.com. Thanks to them for sponsoring this show. Oh, man. I mean, so I want to say one thing. First of all, I didn't get, and there's actually, this is going to come up later. One of you actually reached out and told me what they were saying on the broadcast. So really weird when like people reach out to me and say what I said. It's like surreal, because sometimes when you're just someone who records into a camera at night in their basement, that you kind of forget that people listen to you. So then like being reminded that people are hearing what I'm hearing is wild. But someone mentioned, like, I know that you don't necessarily listen to the broadcast, and they brought up some things there. And in general, this was not a weekend for me where I was able to watch the entire thing. I was actually down at the beach with some friends. I did get to watch the replay of Friday's game. Saturday's game was a little bit more busy. I got to see most of it, especially the end, which frankly was the most important. And then I got to see basically all of Sunday. So if there are little lapses in my memory and recaps, just so you know, that's why. But all in all, guys, let's start with yesterday's game first. The only game that the Padres drop out of this series. Let's start first with Mr. Dylan Cease. Really disappointing kind of outing from him. 5 innings, 5 runs. Oh, no. It wasn't totally disappointing. 5 runs, but only 2 earned on 2 walks, 5 Ks. Look, like I said, my memory, not memory, but my ability to watch all of this wasn't as good as usual, but the Padres make 2 errors in this game, and a lot of people were slandering Ha-Seong Kim. I think Kim deserves more talk tomorrow. I think we're going to save him more for tomorrow's podcast, but I just want to say out there, shouts to everybody who was like giving me crap for saying maybe they should trade him before the season, but I actually think that Ha-Seong Kim is a little bit more complicated of a topic to talk about, so we might save it. We might, or we won't. We won't. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know anything. Let me be very, very clear to you all. I'm a fool. Anyway, but in all seriousness, Dylan Cease, it was a little bit disappointing. He does get roughed up at the beginning of this game, even with the errors and whatnot. But also, he was fine. There wasn't anything really to note here. And frankly, this is a guy who gave up, 1 run in his last 7 starts, practically, including a no-hitter. So yes, it was disappointing that it came against the Marlins, of all teams, for him not to necessarily just go out there. They made 2 comeback wins this weekend, and for you to have your ace on Sunday not be able to just shut down this really poor, frankly anemic Marlins offense. It was disappointing, but again, there was more to it than that. And the Padres once again find themselves down to this Marlins team, which is one of the things I think is worth talking about this weekend, is that I understand that you can't win them all, but even still, there was some really poor pitching performances, I think, that we saw this weekend. And Dylan Cease is one of them, although not the biggest. And we're going to get into some of the biggest, but Sean Reynolds comes in after him. He gives up an earned run. Yuki Matsui, he comes in, gives up a 2-run blast to one Jesus Sanchez. I'm going to skip ahead for a second. One of you actually messaged me, William Songer, shouts to you, sir, on Twitter, message saying, that they mentioned on the broadcast that it was Jesus Sanchez who hits the home run off of him, that he actually had the worst batting average in all of baseball against lefties. It's like, great. Awesome. Yuki Matsui, I still do stand by that. I think his stuff is good, but he's officially reached that point where it's one of those things where you can't just use stats, and I can't just come out and be like, hey, he'll be fine because, look at his OBA and look at his ex-Wobicon and all that. I really do think that it's worth bringing up that this guy's been disappointing for a while, and every time we start to kind of have faith in him, he tends to have moments like this where he gives up crucial runs, especially when the Padres are trying to make a comeback. So that was really, really unfortunate and frustrating, but again, don't worry, folks. You're not the only one that noticed that. But really bad outing for Yuki Matsui. But even still, the Padres fight, and they've been fighting in every single game. I feel like they have about 27 comeback wins over the course of the last week or so. This has been just a magical run. Like, it really has been. So after that bottom of the first inning, frankly, the bottom of the first and second, Jake Berger hits another home run. He had 2 in this series. As talked about with my guy Peter Pratt of Locked On Marlins, that guy can hit for some power, and he's been hot lately. So wasn't surprised that he went deep against the Padres, but man, I wish he could have done it against another team. And instead, this team in the top of the 5th inning finally scores with a lot of ground outs. You get an RBI fielder's choice from not just David Peralta, not just Jurickson Profar, but also Jake Cronenworth. But that all adds up to make it 5-3. And then you get the Jesus Sanchez home run, which frankly just killed a lot of the vibes. And then in the top of the 8th inning, you get a Donovan Solano 2-run bomb. Again, I don't know how many times we have to say this, but it is freaking incredible that Donovan Solano was a free agent for as long as he was. He hits a 2-run bomb, and then in the bottom of the 9th inning, some weirdness occurs. So first of all, you get a Jackson Merrill fly out in an at-bat that I know dang well that the pitcher was scared of. I don't care what you say. I know the Marlins were mortified, especially what happened this weekend. But, of course, George Soriano comes in, is able to get him out. Really rough, really unfortunate, but it happens. Jackson Merrill can't get a hit every single time, but instead, the Padres were about this close. And I'm not going to lie to you, I didn't know this rule. And I want to give a shout out to everybody who told me. Someone actually texted me explaining to me what they said on the broadcast because I couldn't hear it as I was on the ride back home. And I'm just trying to listen to everything. Everything's too loud. That basically what happens, and it's going to be really hard for me to explain it, but if you saw the game, otherwise I recommend looking it up. After, in this same game that everyone's giving Ha-Seong Kim some crap, at least on the internet, that he hits an absolute bomb, and instead it bounces on top of the wall, and then back into play, into the stadium sort of, and then off of the defender's glove, and then it goes out. And I think that what the explanation was that it's not a home run because it came back in, and that if it just bounced off the defender's glove and went out, then it would have been a home run. Or if it just bounced off the top of the railing thing and out, it would have been a home run. But I think it's that because it went back in play for a second, that it's technically on a home run. It is a ground rule double. So the Padres come literally inches away from tying and eventually heading to extra innings, or potentially the Marlins could have won in the bottom of the 9th inning from winning another comeback game against this Marlins team. Really close. And then unfortunately, Luis Campusano strikes out swinging. Not a good showing for my guy. Really bad game for him too. Striking out at one point in this game. Both him and Ha-Seong Kim striking out back to back was really rough. They had bad games. Let's be real. There was a couple RBI opportunities for them, and they do not come up big. Mainly David Peralta after hitting a double, who, by the way, low-key been on fire for a while, by the way. Shouts to David Peralta. He deserves credit. And this is what I was mentioning to you guys before about why they haven't called up Tirso Ornelas, just because while that guy is raking in the minors right now, David Peralta is a vet, and that does carry with it something, especially since he's been kind of okay for the Padres this year. 712 OPS in total right now. He's a veteran. That stuff matters. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to dispute the team building aspect of that, and certainly not the clubhouse aspect of that. And especially given that he has a 762 OPS in 7 games in August, he has been ramping up and getting better. Not at 762, a 1220 OPS this month. So he's been really raking lately. Shouts to him. Really nice bench spot, especially considering that we're just waiting for Tatis to come back. But all in all, not the outcome we would have wanted, but man, you can't really get upset, especially with what else happened this weekend that I frankly can just boil down to holy goddamn atomic firecracker universal explosion alpha omega waterfalls of Niagara just madness that is Jackson Merrill. It is so much fun covering this guy, and we're going to talk about him and his heroics in just a second, guys. But first, I want to take just a moment to talk to you guys about the title sponsor of today's show that we mentioned before, and that is the good folks over at supplyhouse.com. And here's the thing about Supply House. Here's the thing, all right? It ain't easy out here learning the skilled trades. It ain't easy even ordering supplies, but when you use Supply House, it is a lot easier. If you order from this website, you can find thousands of parts from hundreds of brands in just a couple of clicks. That is supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com gives you 24/7 access to a huge selection of plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with fast delivery anywhere in the US. Need help with an order? Don't worry, they got industry-leading experts if you're a fool like me, because Lord knows I don't know anything about anything, frankly, but especially this, they've got you real person every time. Don't worry about any robots or anything. They've got you there. And there's great news for all the plumbers, technicians, and contractors out there. Being a pro has its benefits. Trade industry professionals, you can join the free Trade Master program on supplyhouse.com for free shipping and serious. Let me slow down just a little bit. When you bring up Jackson Merrill, you get excited. What can I tell you guys? You start speaking a little bit faster. And serious discounts on every order. Remember, program for free shipping and serious discounts on every order. Over 100,000 pros already trust the Trade Master program to deliver results. Apply for your membership today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Save money and time when you order online. Go check it out, guys. Real people, real service with supplyhouse.com. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here, thriving and vibing on the Locked On Padres podcast. Your team every day. Let's get into the next game, guys, because we got a lot to talk about. Saturday's game, the game that started with me watching on a beach, because I was like, and Lord, y'all, don't get me started on how much I hate the beach. But I was there, and this game was wild. First, let's start with one Sir Matt Waldron, and then I'm going to get onto my soapbox because this is my show, and that's what I do. Matt Waldron in this game, 4 1/3, 5 earned runs, 2 walks, 5 Ks, but not all of these runs, it's a little bit misleading, because while Matt Waldron doesn't have his best start, let me be very clear, the knuckleball was not hitting the corners, as we've talked about before. He's one of the best pitchers in all of baseball when he hits the left third of the strike zone with his sweeper and the right third of the strike zone with his knuckleball, especially when it comes to jittering whiffs and seeing some of those things that appear on Pitching Ninja and all that stuff. He wasn't super on. They were making contact with his stuff. He was getting strikeouts and whatnot, but they decide to pull him. And frankly, I think it's at least okay to bring up why they did that in this situation. Now, he was losing control. Let me be very clear. I don't think that Waldron looked particularly great in this game. And he's one of those guys that I feel like you can tell sometimes pretty early, if this is fair for me to say, whether or not his knuckleball is working in some of his other pitches. And you saw in this game, yes, he gets a ground out, but then Xavier Edwards gets a single, and then he steals second. And then you get the Jesus Sanchez double, right? Tying the game at this point. By the way, I should probably mention that the Padres, Manny Machado comes through, driving in 2 runs to start this. I'm sorry, not to start the game. He scores later. You also had a Jay Cronenworth double. Really need Jay Cronenworth to step up, by the way, and he's been showing some signs, so that's good. But then you get the Ha-Seong Kim single to allow another run to score. So again, Ha-Seong Kim hatred, I think everyone needs to calm down. But even still, in that bottom of the 4th inning, then he walks Jake Berger. And then they decide to... I'm sorry, I'm a real mess today, guys. It's first the Xavier Edwards single, then a stolen base, then Jesus Sanchez drives one in with a double, then he hits Jonah Brye with a wild pitch. Now, should Mike Schill have taken Matt Waldron out? In my opinion, no. And I'm going to tell you why. Because this bullpen has been really taxed ever since the Pittsburgh series. Specifically when Pittsburgh did their little chicanery nonsense and all of a sudden Dylan Cease, they had to bring in, it was basically a whole bullpen game for 8 innings that they still won. But even still, that's one of the issues that we have here, is that the bullpen is a little bit taxed on this road trip of theirs. They're getting a day off soon, but for now, it's going to be tough. So I would have tried to keep him in for at least the rest of this inning. Try and let him get one more out. I know he didn't look all that great, but I really, really do think that I would have done it, especially against Kyle Stowers, who basically just got there for the Marlins. Not like it was Xavier Edwards or Jake Berger or anything like that. But instead, Jeremiah Estrada comes in, Jonah Brye He moves up on a wild pitch along with Jesus Sanchez. Then he walks Kyle Stowers. Then Otto Lopez gets a double. Then he walks Vidal Brujan. Then there's a sacrifice fly. And then Johnny Pereda gets a single. All of a sudden it is 7-3 for the Padres. Here's my soapbox part. This is what I've been saying. And this is why fundamentally I have a little bit of even a gripe, dare I say, with everyone acting like, oh, there's no way you can hit the Padres. Once you get 5 innings, it's over. If they get 4 runs, it's over. I do not trust relievers. And I think that Jeremiah Estrada, this was one of the worst outings he's had in a while. So while, yes, those runs are charged to one Sir Matt Waldron, Estrada is still charged with 2, and frankly, the others was still his fault. He gets absolutely obliterated very quickly. And by the way, this isn't the only time this happened. He also gave up 2 runs, if you guys remember, against Pittsburgh. They weren't earned, but even still, he also had that blow up against Colorado. Jeremiah Estrada is a good pitcher. Let me be very clear. I like his stuff, and I think his swing and miss stuff can be great. But overall, it shows you everybody was way too quick to jump on this. And I think that this is a little bit of a microcosm of how I feel about the bullpen and why I don't like investing too much in relievers. Because, yes, I love Suarez. Yes, I think Tanner Scott is great. I think Brian Hoeing is great. I think Yuki Matsui, if he's the worst reliever in your bullpen, that's a pretty dang good bullpen. But all in all, you shouldn't be surprised by this stuff, because this is how relievers are. And this is why I hate trusting them, because they will all of a sudden forget how to pitch, and they're giving up 6 earned runs, and they get 2 outs for you. And then you're just sitting there like, and I was told that bullpen is the future of the sport. You know what I mean? And I think that that's kind of what happened here. A really bad outing for Jeremiah Estrada. Of course, he's not the only one. Adrian Morejon comes in. Johnny Brito, though, really quickly, 2 1/3, 3 Ks. Looked pretty sharp considering that he had a little bit of an injury issue down in the minors. So I was very, very impressed with that. His first appearance for the Padres since June 23rd against the Brewers. Hopefully he's learned some things. I've talked about it before. I think that Randy might be needed in a bullpen long inning role, while Brito might have some more upside, so he showed it there. But then Adrian Morejon giving up a run. I've said it before, and I forgot which one of you tweeted at me saying that they don't trust Matsui, and then I don't trust Morejon. You know what I mean? Like, it's just this funny thing where, like, Morejon always makes me nervous. Still a very good pitcher. His stuff is undeniable, but I still think come playoffs and come the big games, be careful if you have the option with bringing in Morejon. There's just something about him where it's an all feelings thing. On my part, maybe I'm doing what I always say that you shouldn't do, reading the body language too much, but that's what happens here. But all in all, still the Padres friggin' come back, top of the 7th inning after that disaster from Jeremiah Estrada. You get Luis Arraez to ground out. He's been slowly getting there, by the way. Jake Cronenworth gets a fielder's choice. Top of the 8th inning, Jackson friggin' Merrill 2-run home run to tie the game, and then Luis Arraez comes in and then gets a single, and then eventually they go into extras. Jake Berger hits a home run, unfortunately, in the bottom of the 8th to tie the game up. Shouts to Morejon, like I said, and then Luis Arraez, they ground out, they manufacture some runs, and then thankfully they're able to bring in Tanner Scott, who thankfully does not inexplicably explode, shuts down the game, and the Padres get the W. Just really good stuff. I want to say Jackson Merrill was like a historic moment for him. This from Sarah Langs. Jackson Merrill has 4 game-tying or go-ahead home runs in the 9th inning or later this season, tied for most by a rookie in a season in the expansion era since 1961 with 2021 Adolis Garcia. You guys remember him? Adolis Garcia is super clutch. That guy's a World Series champion, so pretty decent company if you ask me. Yeah. I mean, Jackson Merrill's a stud. We're not going to talk too much about it because we still got to keep talking about him. So I don't want to, spend only this game talking about him because we also have Friday's game in which the Padres get the W 6-2. And I want you to guess what happened in this game. Firstly, starting pitching. Our guy, Martin Perez. Talked about this in the crossover with Peter. I wanted to see how he did here. 7 innings was my most impressive thing. Gives up 2 earned runs on 3 hits. Walks 2, strikes out 6. He basically just makes 2 mistakes. One to Jake Berger, who killed us this weekend, and then the other one to Jonah Bride. But other than that, that was it. And he got 6 strikeouts, and he looked, based on what I've been, again, I didn't get to see the full game. I was away this weekend. But this is exciting. This is one of the most exciting under-the-radar developments for the entire Padres team right now. Because if they have him, and if they think that Martin Perez can give them at least a little bit of something, that's impressive. His changeup generated 8 whiffs in this game. And his sinker and curveball were at least okay too. Now, did they have the most movement in the world? No. But there has been some improvements here, and I like the whiffs, especially on the changeup. This is exciting. I don't think this guy is going to be even necessarily our next Matt Waldron. But the fact that it looks like they see something in him that they're able to recapture, maybe it wasn't just a desperation, crap, we gave everything up for the bullpen. Get Martin Perez, I guess. It looks like they might have been onto something. So I'm waiting for his next start because this is still the Marlins team. But even still, this Marlins team has been hitting better lately, and they certainly hit, Dylan Cease and Matt Waldron a decent amount this weekend. So I'm very excited, guys, by what I'm seeing from Martin Perez. And at least he's had moments before. This isn't a nobody. Like, he's never been amazing, except for 2 years ago with the Rangers, kind of inexplicably, and I don't think that's going to be what he can deliver again. But he's a pitcher. Like, he's a guy who can get up there and throw innings. But I think he can be a little bit better than past, this guy's just here to throw innings, acquisitions that the Padres have made. Guys like Rich Hill, Vincent Velasquez, Jake Arrieta, et cetera, et cetera. Occasionally even, now this is different, but like, Morejon once upon a time, I feel like there were times they called him up to be a starter just because they needed some innings. But I'm really excited, guys. I think this might be something. He's not going to start a playoff game, but I think for the rest of the year, this is big, and it means that all they need is one of Joe Musgrove or Yu Darvish. That puts them in a great position. But of course, that's not it, guys. In this game, the Padres are down, heading into, the top of the 8th inning. Manny Machado gets a double to bring in Jurickson Profar, and then Jackson Merrill, top of the 9th inning, he loses his mind, tying the game, and then eventually they win this game by a score of 6-2, top of the 10th inning. All the hits come in. Reached on a fielder's choice from Jay Cronenworth. Manny Machado gets a huge double to put them super far ahead. And then Jackson Merrill, because why not, hits another RBI to make the final score 6-2. Guys, Jackson Merrill is friggin' special. And not too long ago, I did an episode with Ethan Smith. I talked about it before, whether or not he is the Rookie of the Year. That's the big question. And we're going to talk about it in a second because some of you guys have some questions and comments about it because some of y'all were hating. Deservedly so, some might even say. But before we get into that, guys, I just want to take 1 second to talk to you about the good folks over at Ibotta. That's right. It's been a while since we've been talking about Ibotta. But let me tell you, sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids, whatever it is, what do they have in common? You're probably buying a ton of it. Again, this summer, because that's what summer's all about, guys. But don't stress about the cost. You can use Ibotta, IBOTTA, and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Now, me personally, I'm a big fan of some cheddar popcorn, you know what I mean? And then I'm a fan of getting the sunscreen. Guess what? Those type of things, that's exactly what Ibotta is very helpful for. It's a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. That's great. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns the average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the entire cost of like 2 trips and maybe even get you a ticket to a Padres game. Who knows? So that's what it's here for. Other apps don't give you the same punch. You know what I mean? But with Ibotta, they got you covered. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, as well as places like Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and many more. So go check it out, guys. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB. It's a nice little treat for you guys. So again, just go to the Apple Store or Google Play Store. Check it out. Download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for that $5 discount. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play and App Store, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. But that, of course, is not it, everybody. We also got to talk about our friends, our OGs over at FanDuel. And here's the thing. I love sports. I can't get enough. But even when it's just baseball going on, sometimes you're wondering, like, well, we're not in full sports season. But don't worry. With FanDuel, they're giving all of their customers a bonus or boost daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Go check that out. Tell me about your parlays, whatever you want. And they've got them all. And all sorts of discounts, not discounts, but like, what's the word? Offers. They have all sorts of promotional offers constantly, and no matter what time it is, even if all you have is baseball. That's right. If you're listening to this podcast and you want more than baseball, don't worry. They got you on everything. Don't worry about it. Go check it out, guys. FanDuel, like I said, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And just like that, folks, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Now we are listening and reacting and reading your questions. I guess not technically listening. You're listening to me. Hopefully, anyway. Thank you, everybody, for making us your first listen every day. Let's get into the mailbag, which will be used to talk about a litany of topics. Firstly, here's an easy one. This one from @TheOpinionatedSportsman says, Javi, who do you think is a better catcher? To me, this is a tough one, Higgy or Campy. And do either of them have staying power with the Padres? Here's the thing. It's clearly Higgy right now because, as we've discussed many times, the offense of Higgy is just genuinely astonishingly good now. This is not a guy that career-wise has ever been. I think I talked about on the last show that like he's kind of like not good enough to be a starter over the course of his career, I'm saying, not necessarily this year. Good enough to be like a full-time majority split starter, but he's definitely a little bit overqualified as a backup. And when they acquired him, it was exciting because you looked at it saying this guy can be a backup to Campy and just call some good games and have good defense. And that's kind of what he's delivered this year. But usually his career WRC plus is 84. This year it's 125. Once again, the Padres getting a lot out of what ends up not being their backup catcher, but like their perceived backup catcher. So last year, of course, you got it from Campy and you got it from Gary Sanchez kind of out of nowhere. So former Yankee catchers, is that the key? I don't know. But yes, it is absolutely Kyle Higashioka right now, sir. But I have some hope that at least Campy maybe can learn something in the future. But man, after this weekend with those strikeouts, like I mentioned with runners on base, both him and Kim, both striking out back to back, him striking out later, him striking out to end the game, he hasn't done it. And considering that he doesn't hit the ball too hard, and considering that he doesn't draw that many walks, that's what concerns me. My thing is that you make contact, but you're not making good contact. So otherwise, I'm just kind of looking at this like, yeah, he doesn't strike out, he doesn't whiff too much, but he's not doing enough. He's just not. So I don't see it, but there's still some time with him. He is young, I will say. And with Higashioka, I would have to see kind of just what the Padres are thinking of when it comes to a lot of their minor league options. Brandon Valenzuela is another catcher they have in their farm system. Maybe he's a type that maybe they look at this and say, you know, maybe we'll call him up and maybe he can be a backup or something like that next year. But in terms of our guy, I will say Higgy, he's a free agent after this year. Unrestricted free agent this next year. So I don't know if they're going to be able to keep him. And he is performing at a level that tells me he's going to get a little bit of a payday that the Padres might not match this coming offseason. But we shall see. Another comment coming by way of @Enrique Reyes on YouTube saying there should be 2 different awards, Rookie Pitcher of the Year and Rookie Position Player of the Year. Should there be? Are we sure? See, here's the thing. As someone who likes to make sure that we don't get down this path of like, oh, well, this guy got snubbed, so that, guess what? There's always going to be a snub. This is a big league, and there's always going to be players that are snubbed because in order for someone to win an award, some other great person isn't going to win. There's something called the silver medal. You know what I mean? Like, we have that going on with Team USA right now. So I think that I don't know if I would do that. I get it, and here's why I do get it. Because it's an unfair, not advantage, but it's kind of like the way John Oliver is in the same award category as like the other late night hosts, like Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, Seth Meyers, et cetera, Jimmy Fallon. Because his show's once a week, and it is a late night, you know, kind of talk show with politics and jokes and monologues and all that. But they do theirs every day. So it's a little bit almost unfair because it's like, yeah, he is better, but he's only going once. And I think that that's kind of where we are with Jackson Merrill versus Paul Skeens right now, where it's like, I'm struggling because here's the thing. This past weekend, I genuinely think, and I don't think a week can usually do it, but the 4-game tying or game-winning plays that Jackson Merrill has made, and by the way, don't forget that he also has some walk-off home runs. Remember the A's one? He has that. He's had so many great moments. He has the juice that, you know, Paul Skeens isn't on the same juice level, I think, as Jackson Merrill at this point, given how much better he's been doing lately. So it's close. It's close. And I still think that, look, frankly, guys, we still have like 2 months left. You know what I mean? They still do. We still have 2 months left. So let's give it a little bit more time. But for right now, I really do think that the past week, I think that Jackson Merrill is the leading candidate now for Rookie of the Year. I know that sounds like I'm immediately going back on what I said just a week ago, but I do stand by it. But I will also stand by my points that I made during that time, which is that I do think that what Paul Skeens is doing, we've seen players do numbers-wise, not situation, not attitude, none of that stuff, not necessarily the moving positions from being a shortstop to center field, which is a crazy transition. But in terms of the raw numbers, we've seen people deliver stuff that Jackson Merrill has been doing this year. In my opinion, we haven't quite seen that with someone like Paul Skeens. Although, someone brings up a great point, or at least a little bit of an observation. This one coming from @Albert Vasquez on YouTube saying, lest we forget Steven Strasburg had the same amount of hype as Skeens, possibly more, put up comparable numbers, even better FIP and K per 9, but was called up late and shut down early. Strasburg was younger by almost a year as well. That's fair. That is fair. But in my opinion, I just think Skeens has been a little bit more impressive. I do. But I think that is a great call. That is a great call, that just the overall volume, maybe you just got to give it to Jackson Merrill for that. And maybe, again, I'm feeling a little bit bad that it's like, so is it just always going to be position players or just never going to appreciate the other thing? I don't like that. Football has this problem where you have MVP, but it will literally never go to anyone but quarterback. Even when the best quarterback is only marginally better than the second best quarterback. That's a no-line tangent, sorry. But again, I think it's Merrill right now, but let's say Merrill enters a slump, which he did, by the way, at one point this season. If that happens and Skeens is like winning the Cy Young, guys, I think he was heading into his lat before his start against the Dodgers. I believe that he was second in Cy Young odds. Think about that for a second, guys. That's the only reason why I'm still a believer that this race is still there, although I do think Merrill has taken the lead. More comments and questions, though, and we have a lot of observations from @Silas Robert Shaw. Do you think they will give King a rest for a couple of starts since he has already blown past his highest inning total for a season? This is a great question, and I haven't read anything about it. This is a topic that I think is going to arise at some point. I think they could. I think that there might be days where they maybe take him out a little bit early, but in general, there hasn't been any sign of it, because if they were thinking about an innings limit, I feel like we would have seen a little bit more of it already. But as of right now, I don't know, man. I think that they might just keep letting it ride at least a little bit. But with the bullpen, I could see this be a situation where they're just like, all right, if he goes 5 strong, maybe we'll pull him there, assuming the bullpen is all rested and stuff, and assuming that they have a Musgrove who maybe comes back, they can have some other guys. But if they don't, I think that's been a big reason why they've always been letting King go as long as he can, and going out and balling as we all know he can. That they've had they haven't had a surplus of pitching. So I think personally, I think that they have to at least think about it, because then the question about the playoffs comes in. If I knew we were getting prime, like usual Joe Musgrove, I would be a lot more bullish on saying let's cut back on the King innings. But if we don't know what we're getting, that guy might be the second starter in a playoff series. Like, he might be. Seriously, like that might be the second starter for a playoff series. So we're going to see how it pans out. But I imagine that we're going to get more detail on that soon, especially with this next cycle through the rotation. Next up, what is Rookie of the Year from @PhoenixAsh927? Is it most valuable rookie or is it best rookie? I think that it's best rookie, and is anyone doing their job better than Skeens? After sweeping the Pirates, we could start arguing for Merrill, but Skeens has the inside track. Again, I get it. And also, the blockbuster value of Skeens can't be ignored, and I imagine that a lot of voters are going to feel that way. @TonySue8860 says, poor Randy Vasquez, one bad outing in maybe 6 of the last 6, and maybe the last 6, and everyone, not just this channel, is bad-mouthing him. First of all, calm down. Have I been bad-mouthing Randy Vasquez? Can you guys tell me? I feel like I've been okay with him. Started the year with some bad outings, and your reputation will never improve. First of all, you're also commenting on the wrong channel. I was defending Matt Waldron after he got torched by the D-backs for 8 runs in 3 innings. So no, I'm totally for not just using a few starts to ruin your reputation. I just think that Randy, if the numbers don't lie, everybody's been tuning up basically all his pitches this year for the most part, right? This is a guy who, and it doesn't take long to find this, by the way, that Randy Vasquez doesn't really have any particular pitch that's like a wipeout like thing to go to, because again, I personally believe he's better suited for the bullpen. But if you look at all of his pitches, batters are hitting 338 against his four-seamer. There's an expected batting average of 282 against his curveball. They're hitting 429 against his sinker. They have an expected batting average of 291 against his cutter. His changeup, they're hitting 378. And then the only pitch it looks like is his sweeper, which he throws only 9% of the time. That's the only one, I guess, that he's been doing okay with a batting average of 222 against. So I was a little bit wrong in that regard, but he hasn't been very good. But I haven't given up on him. I just don't know if his role is as a starting pitcher. Moving on, though. Again, from at Tony Sue 8860, I don't know where Javi got the idea that Higgy is the number one catcher ahead of Campy. There's no basis for that. Higgy was obtained in the Soto trade because New York has a ton of catchers in their system, and Higgy caught all the pitches the Padres were getting. And then you add in Higgy is also willing to catch Waldron's knuckleballs. Put all that together, and Campy is catching only Cease. Campy just isn't the primary option for any current starter except Cease because everyone else is injured. I'm a little bit confused. So I would, Tony, I'm actually going to ask you a question. First of all, I think it's very clear that Higgy is the number one option. I might be wrong here, but I believe that the guy with a better WRC plus, better defense, and more power than any catcher that the Padres have had, and frankly, no, okay, fine. We had Gary last year, in fairness. But in a while, that he's the number one option. But if what you're trying to say is that the reason he's been playing more is because of the lack of Musgrove, the lack of Darvish, maybe they're more familiar with Campizano, is that, I don't know if that's totally what you're trying to say. And I think, Campizano can, I don't think the knuckleball is the biggest thing. I think that, I don't know if that's the biggest thing. I think that Campizano can't catch any pitch is some of the problems with him. But so I'm asking you, Tony, to clarify your comments, and I really appreciate your comments on this channel, by the way, so I'm not giving you any crap for it. But I'm just wondering, I don't know exactly what you're saying. I think it's very clear that Campizano is number two. I don't know what I've been missing here. But last of the YouTube comments, I really enjoyed this one. At 24 Tommy ST says, I was watching some nature show the other day, and the black mamba was shown taking out every man killer out there, lions, hippos, etc. And then comes along this wimpy little mongoose, and before you know it, the snake's head looks like ground beef. It's like that sometimes. A certain animal or person or team or whatever will just have your number, and that seems to be the Padres with the Rockies. Just God bless you, Tommy. That was an amazing comment, and I really appreciate it. A little bit old, I understand, from the Rockies series, but man, did I freaking appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir. Next one coming from a longtime listener and someone I actually met in real life, Mr. Josh D. Landis but is Glenn Otto apologist on Twitter. Not sure when your mailbag is again, and not even really a question, but maybe more of a topic. Definitely recency bias involved. I still can't believe we didn't trade Kim last offseason at peak value when he had 1 year left. We know we have Leo DeVries probably 2 to 3 years out. We could have gotten really solid value for him and kept X, as in Xander, at shortstop and gotten a stopgap for 2 to 3 years, a second baseman or first baseman because of Jay Cronenworth. Hindsight is 2020, but I had been saying all offseason we should deal him despite loving him. Hey, everybody wants to go back and look up my crossovers I did with Ben Kaspick, the Locked On Giants, among other things. And I did a whole episode on why I wanted to trade Ha-Seong Kim. Part of it was that he was giving me a free agent. And I actually remember some of y'all, the same people who turned on Kim this weekend, not necessarily you, Josh, of course, but everyone was like, hey, we should extend him. You know what I mean? He had a 4.3 F4 last year. He had a good WRC plus, all that stuff. I am not for extending utility players of Kim's ilk. You know what I mean? I think that Kim is a guy who could play third really well. He could play shortstop really well. He could play second base really, really well. We know that. He won a Gold Glove last year. And frankly, I bet you can get him to play first. You shouldn't, but that you can get him to play anywhere is basically what I'm saying here. And I just think that you can find players like Kim for maybe, even if it's only like a one-hit wonder type of season, I think you can find players like him. His defense has still been good this year, although not as unbelievable as it was last year. Actually, at second base, he's been a little bit worse this year in terms of defensive runs saved and outs above average. He's been worse. But all in all, on top of the fact that I don't believe in extending more utility sort of infield players like Kim who don't hit for a lot of power and frankly don't hit aren't huge pluses offensively, I'm not a big fan of extending them. So that left you with, you've got 1 year with Kim. And for me, my other thing was, you'd move him, you get to put Jake Cronenworth back at second. And then you can get Jake Cronenworth's defensive value, and he's shown that he can be really good there. He's been great at first this year, and he's even shown that he can add more to that wins above replacement if you put him at second base. So I was campaigning for it too. Now, the big thing that's happened, of course, is that the Padres are going for it, and if you really are we got to go for it, then yes, keeping Kim makes sense, especially given that nothing is finite, right? We don't know for sure that DeVries will be awesome in 2 to 3 years. We don't know for sure. I'm excited about him. I think he's got some good power. I think that he can field a decent amount. His hit tool is amazing, right? This is a guy who seems to be able to just get his bat to the ball no matter where it is, but he's still young, and we don't know how everything's going to shake up. But all in all, I do agree with you. This is why, just in general, I want to use this question as a springboard to just mention, just because someone's producing at a high level right now does not immediately mean sign, extend, boom, go for it. I understand that this is new for Padres' era of baseball to actually have a team that's like super competitive and a contender, but you shouldn't be extending everyone that looks great immediately because things change. Like I said, Ha-Seong Kim last year, guys, Ha-Seong Kim at one point last year was hitting like 260, 270 with like a 350 on base. He looked outstanding. Like Ha-Seong Kim was like an all-star practically caliber player last year. And then his offense declined. These things happen. Michael King might decline next year. We don't know. So to me, unfortunately, because of the amount of contracts the Padres have given out, you can't just overcommit to everything that looks good at the moment. But again, that's just me. Moving on now to the next question, as we almost conclude this very long, very chunky boy Monday podcast from longtime listener Rama Murray. Question for Monday's show. If the playoffs started today, which team should the Padres be most afraid of playing? I would say the D-backs, since they have been on a roll. Phillies scare me, but have been struggling, and the same with the Dodgers. Love to hear your thoughts. Dodgers are a little bit scary, but granted, as we all know, the Dodgers aren't great in the postseason. I do not want to play Philly. That team has too much of juice. I know they've been weird lately, but every team's been weird lately. Remember the Yankees? The Yankees were in a weird, month-long spiral, and they've been playing a little bit better lately. For me, it's Milwaukee. It's Atlanta. I'm scared of the D-backs, but I wouldn't be mortified, oh no, we have to play them. For me, it's more about the teams that I'm not scared of, and that is the Milwaukee Brewers. That is the New York Mets, because I don't think the Mets rotation is good, and I think they know it too. I think they know that losing Kodai Senga immediately after bringing him in, I think they know that they're in trouble. They still have a really good offense and they can hit, but I'm not scared. I just don't think that their pitching is going to be able to match up, especially because Diaz, their closer, all-star closer, hasn't been as good. The Braves are falling apart and might not even make the playoffs. I'd love to play them. So for the teams I'd like to play, it's the Braves, Mets, and Brewers. Dodgers are right at the tier right above it. And then the tier of I don't want to play are your Phillies and I think your Diamondbacks, honestly, the more I think about it. The D-backs just look like they're on a mission right now, man. They caught fire right when the Padres did, so I'm very scared of them. And they are getting your Jordan Montgomerys, your Eduardo Rodriguez, they're getting healthier. And that's scary. So if they get anything out of Corbin Carroll at all, that team's going to be scary and dangerous. And I'm very nervous. At Zachary Shelton on Twitter says, could you talk a little bit on an upcoming show about how even though the team is winning and they're getting some good press, they're still getting a little disrespected because with the MLB coverage always has to be about the Dodgers or Yankees. There was something I read earlier that the MLB wrote a story post that was originally about Arizona and San Diego catching up to the Dodgers. They instead rewrote it to ask if the Dodgers will win the NL West for an 11th time in 12 seasons. Wow. There's a lot of reasons for this. Number one is that this industry is heading towards more and more clickbaity stuff. And despite what you will hear, not to get overly political, that is not because there's not money to go around. That's not because no one's paying attention. There is. It's just that more websites and more leadership, more new management has come into a lot of outlets and made it that they prioritize only clicks. And that's not always bad. Plenty of places have to, you go through the runs, the routines. For someone I interned at a website before, you have to do the news updates. You know what I mean? You have to do a little news article about something that came in to get some clicks. But then you also have a considerable amount of effort towards quality and things that aren't only, although certainly influenced by, clicks and what's going to get the most attention. It's just gone so much more to the former, which is just clicks only. So as a result, more sports places are going to be putting Dodgers in headlines because they are the bigger team. Sorry. They are the bigger team. So instead, they can talk about the Padres and stuff, but you have to frame it in a way that mentions the Dodgers. So it's like, hey, Jackson Merrill, he's second in slugging since June 12th. You know who's first? Shohei Ohtani. So how would you title that? You go, only one player has been better than Shohei Ohtani. Something like that, because you want to put the name in there. So as a result, you have to remember the big markets and all that. But I just must emphasize to everybody to be a little bit opinionated for a second. It's not just journalists and reporters and whatnot. These are high edicts on top from management and stuff to influence and push only the more clickbaity stuff. That doesn't mean it's always bad and lazy. It just means that's where the incentive is. So keep an eye out on that. But overall, look, this was a tough weekend series. Just to end it on that note, I understand that there's concerns over the pitching. I want to wait a little bit longer because I do think that Pirates series and their chicanery ruining everything with Cease threw things off. But I understand also that 30 runs in 6 games between the Pirates and the Marlins, even with that game, is still bad. So I want to keep an eye on it, and I still want to remind everybody that this is why I'm not big on bullpens. So we'll see how it goes, but I've been talking for too dang long, everybody. That about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow the show or myself on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, or at LO_Padres. Tomorrow's episode going to be a little bit delayed the day after. I am unfortunately a little bit busy and will not be able to record immediately following tomorrow night's game. So it will be an early upload. I'll record it as soon as I wake up on Tuesday, but just keep that in mind. Otherwise, until next time, stay safe and of course, stay faithful, my Friday faithful homies. Take care.